What is up, YouTube? Today, we are going to be getting into how you can correctly identify your bias every single day. All right, so let's get into it. So, the first thing that you want to start off by doing is going to your higher time frame, right? I consider the higher time frame to be the daily and below, or the daily to 1 hour. Okay, so we're going to start on daily time frame. And the very first thing that I want you guys to do is to identify your current price leg and the price leg to the left of it, right? So this could be the opposite. In this case, um, it's that we have a bearish leg to the left and a bullish leg on the right, right? So what we can currently see is that we are moving higher on this daily time frame, right? And a way to identify if we're overall bullish or bearish is to look at our fair value gaps. All right, so as you can see, since the daily time frame is a pretty high time frame, we only have really two fair value gaps here and here, right? But what we do see here is that price is holding this bullish PDRA or fair value gap, right? While at the same time disrespecting this bearish PDRA. So this is exactly what we want to see in a bullish scenario. We want to see price respecting bullish PDRAs while at the same time disrespecting bearish. All right. So now if we go to our 4-hour time frame, you can see here that we can get a little bit of a closer view. But yeah, there's a lot more fair value gaps. But looking at the same bullish leg, what do we see? 4-hour held. We're making higher highs and higher lows, and overall our gaps are holding, right? Even for some of them, like this one where we traded through it and displaced right back up into the range. Okay, so our bullish price action is holding. Now on the left side, which is our bearish, what do we see? We see this fair value gap. What happened? Got traded through. We see these 4-hour fair value gaps. What happened? Got traded through. All right. So if we see that on the daily and 4-hour, we can confidently say that our overall narrative, right, on the higher time frame is bullish. Okay. But then you might be wondering, so how do I know on a day-to-day basis where price is going to go? Because even though you can know on the daily and 4-hour, that doesn't really give you really of a pinpoint idea on where price is going to go. Going into the open, right? So getting into this is where we are going to go into the power of D, or in other words, called AMD, which is accumulation, manipulation, and distribution. So here I'm going to bring up a example of AMD, right? So this is what an AMD setup will look like. All right. So going into the day, let's say here this is our 8:30 open, happening somewhere around here. We're looking at pre-market, and we see that price has accumulated. It's the same thing as our consolidation, right? Price manipulated above or below that consolidation. And then the distribution phase is when we go deeper into that range. So consolidation, move above or below, and then we have a push in the opposite direction. Okay? So that's the second thing. I'm going to show you guys how to identify this on the chart, right? And I already have them marked out here, so they're pretty easy for me to show you guys, but I'll show you guys how frequently this works. All right. So going here, let me go to the 5-minute time frame. Okay. Here we have our 8:30 open. So what we can see going prior into the day is that overnight, right, during Asia session, we had this somewhat consolidation in this fairly tight range. Going into London, what can you see is that we manipulated lower, okay? And then going into our New York session, we had that reversal here, and then we had a distribution back up into the range, taking out those Asia highs. All right, now the day before that, what do we see here? Okay, so as you can see, we had this consolidation. This is our 8:30. So as you can see, we traded above that original consolidation. We have our accumulation, then we had our manipulation higher above that consolidation, and then a distribution back down the range, taking out these external lows, okay? Now, let's go to the Friday before that. Going into this day, all right? Now, this is a little bit of a different case where our 8:30 open is fairly late here. 8:30 is here, but I can still show you guys how you could have positioned yourselves early in the market if you wanted to, okay? So let's say here at around 8, you would have been able to see that we had this accumulation at the high. We had a manipulation lower, right? And then we had that smart reversal pushing us higher and then taking out the high. So I have many other examples of this, but that is one way. And you can see it happens very, very frequently. If you're just able to identify that accumulation slash consolidation period, right? Identify where that distribution is, or that manipulation is, you'll be able to catch that distribution leg, which is usually larger than our manipulation. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you one last thing to put these two things together with using those higher time frame PD arrays, right? And AMD to solidify this and give you extreme accuracy. Okay. The very, very last thing is using cracks and correlation, or for other words, an SMT divergence. All right. So cracks and correlation are a little bit more in detailed, and I can go more in depth on all the different types of crack and correlations in another video. But today I'm just going to stick to SMT divergences. All right. So let me show you how you compare these AMD cycles with your SMTs. Okay. So going into today, which was Tuesday, what can we see here, right? We had that accumulation higher. So if we accumulate high and we're about to open here, where will we expect our manipulation? We'd expect the manipulation to the downside to in turn move us higher. So we see during our manipulation, we ended up taking out this prominent previous day low. After we took out that previous day low, look at what we had created, all right? So an SMT divergence is between two different pairs, right? And in this case, the closest correlating asset to NASDAQ is the S&P 500 or ES, right? So you see that NASDAQ works to take out this external low, right? Now, if we head over to ES, what do we see here? The very same low, and we go to 8 o'clock, right? As you see, ES had failed to take out that low. So what this did is it left us a bullish SMT divergence, right? With NASDAQ being our leading pair and ES being our lagging pair. NASDAQ leading because it was the one to sweep out the low, okay? So you can see here, if at this point in time, we saw the sweep, we knew that we are in our manipulation phase because we passed through this consolidation. And at the same time, we had this crack and correlation, right? We could look to position ourselves inside of this distribution leg to catch the move higher, right? So when you're trading AMD, there are only two cycles that you want to be in, right? Or when you want to take a trade entry. So you either want to take your trade entry inside of the manipulation leg or the distribution leg. 9 times out of 10, it's best to try to get in on the distribution leg, right? Because it's much more clear. But the only downside to getting in on the distribution leg is a lot of times your entry and RR won't be as precise as possible, okay? So another way, if it aligns with your strategy, right, is you can try to get in on this manipulation leg, but you have to be really, really precise, because in this manipulation, price will continuously be able to make lower lows in this situation, right? And you won't necessarily know exactly when this manipulation phase is over. That's when it can make it risky. But this is how you can use SMT divergences to give you a time-based signal that price is going to want to try to reverse, right? So let's say here, without the SMT, we'd be seeing price here, okay? And then let's say we see this huge move below, and we're thinking, oh, okay, we actually had our accumulation. We ended up manipulating lower here. Oh, we're probably going to have our distribution, right? But wrong. Look what happens. We ended up failing and taking out that low again, right? But look what happens as soon as we get that crack and correlation. So this SMT divergence at the lows, right? We get that, we take out the low, and then we have our move higher, and you can find some way to position yourself into the market during this manipulation or distribution period. All right. One way you could have done that was taking in inversion fair value gap. All right. So you could have entered somewhere like here, put your stop at the lows, and you could have targeted our external high. You could target any one of these highs. And if you targeted our H high on a day like this, you could have hit a 1 to 3. Not saying that this price action was the best. I was actually expecting a better day coming from a red folder news day, but you don't always know. But we did get the direction right for the day. All right. Or you could have targeted either one of these highs. But what you can see is in all case scenarios, you at least got over a 1 to 2. It's pretty good, right? Now let's go into a bearish scenario. Okay. So going into the day before that, this was Monday of this week. What can we see? We have 8:30. So let's say we get on the chart somewhere around 8 o'clock, right? And we're looking back to see. So overall, where's price on the chart? Obviously, we are relatively high, okay? And what I see to the left of us is that we have this consolidation / accumulation, right? Right at New York, we ended up, or pre-market, we ended up manipulating above that, right? And we ended up taking out this high. Then we had our distribution lower. But then you might be asking, was there an SMT? And let's check. 135 in 8:30. I'm going to go to my 1 hour time frame. We have 1 and 8. Let's see. And what would you guess? ES had failed to take out this high, while NQ ended up taking out this high. So in this case, again, NQ would be our leading pair. Okay. So if you would have taken that early, what could have happened? Right? Same exact scenario. So let's say coming here into pre-market, we see, oh, prices moved above this accumulation point. We end up taking out these highs, and then you would be like, okay, we see this very, very strong rejection. Let me try to take like this inversion fair value gap or this CISD entry. But what would have happened? You've gotten stopped out. But in this case, what would happen if you had just waited for that prominent Kraken correlation / SMT divergence, which is here? You would have positioned yourself correctly in the market and would have been able to capture how many points? Let's see. That's around 560, almost nearly 250 points, right? That would be an amazing move if you can position yourself correctly here. I bet, y'all, my laptop almost died. But what y'all can see here is that frequently we get this AMD setup, right? So not only for these 2 days, but if we go back, what can we see? Friday, accumulation high, manipulation lower, distribution higher. Thursday, accumulation, manipulation higher, distribution lower. Wednesday, accumulation, manipulation lower, distribution higher. Tuesday, accumulation at the lows, right? A manipulation higher, and then a distribution lower, taking out that original consolidation low. Now going into Monday, what do we see? An accumulation, a manipulation lower, and a distribution higher. So my bad for being so redundant, all right? But as y'all can see, it happens very, very frequently, right? And the power of using AMD in these Kraken correlations is it doesn't necessarily require you to have a higher time frame PD array, right, to identify your bias. Because you see, especially in conditions like these, we don't always make them. Let me put this down to the side. But yeah, going into this daily time or 4-hour time frame, you can see like we've barely really put in any fair value gaps in this choppy range, right? We've had some order blocks here and there, but they haven't been, holding very precisely. But if instead you just follow the accumulation, manipulation, distribution. You use these prominent SMTs at the highs or lows, right? It'll allow you to position yourself correctly in the market without having to wait for one of those higher time frame PD arrays, right? But yeah, so that was the entire rundown on how you can correctly identify bias every single day. As you can see, it's happening every single day, except here, which was some weeks ago, but this was Thanksgiving, right? So, but if you can see though, even though this didn't follow through on Thanksgiving Day, on the higher time frame, so this wasn't even one day, this actually happened throughout multiple days. So you see Wednesday accumulated, right? Or we had this, let's say, instead just for Thursday, right? So we had our accumulation here. We had this manipulation higher. And what ended up happening? We ended up having a distribution on Sunday, right? So it can be used on a lower time frame basis, like here, to identify your daily bias, or it could be used in a higher time frame context to position yourself either in the correctly in the week, throughout multiple days. It's however you choose. But yeah, this is my personal method on how I identify bias very, very frequently. If you use this rule book right here, right, I promise y'all will correctly identify bias 9 times out of 10. So let me just put up this so you can remember. So the very 3 things to identify your bias, right? Higher time frame price action. We're seeing if we are respecting bullish P arrays and disrespecting bearish, or vice versa in a bearish scenario. Um, the next step is identifying our accumulation, manipulation, and distribution, right? Slash power of 3. And the very last thing, to make sure we get in at the correct time, right, is using our Kraken correlations or SMT divergences. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And please feel free to ask me any questions down below in the comments, and I will be happy to answer them. All right. And if you could, please drop a follow, like, and turn on those notifications so I can continue dropping fire ass content for y'all. All right. Love y'all, boys. Have a great rest of your training week. Bye bye.